I'm going to cut straight to the point, and I'm going to show you in this diagram. The first thing to understand is that the path isn't linear. It's not. And most people like to kind of gauge or judge the level of that they're on this path by looking at how far they've come or looking at some kind of thing. There is no linear structure to this. It's always momentary, obviously. You cannot have something be other than that. So what I'm going to share with you, though, is guiding principles that were essential on my path, and also my teacher's path and his teacher's path, and it'll give you a better understanding. So the first thing is to see, and it can happen in any order, we're just putting it in order for the sake of it. The first thing is to see your being. It's very simple, to see yourself without an object. To see yourself without any object in the experience, which means to recognize the experience of being. It's actually very simple. You recognize the experience of being. The experience of being is literally the fact that you exist. Now, most people believe that that existence is sourced by the body. There's the next issue, but we're not going to go there yet. We just want to know that, do we have the experience that I am? If the answer is yes, the experience of being is the experience to which the phrase I am is referring to. We can only say I am if we are, right? In other words, we can only say I am if we do exist. If we didn't exist, we couldn't even contemplate the question, right? When we say to go to the I am, what we're referring to is to that place where there is no object and yet you still know something. And that thing that you know is actually the absence of knowledge, and it's the absence of any objective quality. So I call it the absence, basically. Knowing the absence. And this is pretty much what the absolute is. So you need to see your being. Usually, let's just pretend this is your being. Usually your being is aware of objects. So usually you only know beingness because, oh, look, I know beingness. Look, everything exists. Look, there's existence everywhere. But the problem is that you still believe that the beingness or the existence-ness of what you perceive comes from the thing you're perceiving. So in other words, if I perceive the wine glass, I think that the wine glass has existence, but this isn't true. So then the next thing to see is my being limited? Now, your being is actually the experience of pure consciousness, but I don't usually use that phrase as much anymore because people use it to describe the mind, which is not true. Most people only know this is consciousness, this is mind. The mind is literally everything that you could possibly experience. It is basically any thought, feeling, sensation, perception, visualization. Even if you were to take like DMT and somehow have like another sense that could pick up that wasn't a sight, smell, touch, or taste, and you could like somehow experience some other alternative thing, it would still be mind. It would still be what the mind is. The mind is literally just whatever you experience. To put it into clearer terms, if you think of an ocean, the mind is just a wave on the ocean of consciousness. Most people think that consciousness is illusory. It's only illusory if you believe this is consciousness. But the paradox is this is consciousness, but it's not essentially consciousness. So this wave that we have right here is literally what the world will appear to be. So the wave, in relative speaking, is the microphone, the pads, the phone, whatever you see in front of you, your sensations, the sounds, anything literally that is possible to experience. So the second question is my being limited? So then the next thing you do is you just literally inquire and ask yourself, is my being limited to my body and mind? In other words, do my body and mind source existence? Do they create the experience of existence? That's the next step. Then the third step is to see the nature. The nature of being, it doesn't matter which order it's in, but the nature of being is basically you understand the implications of these first two understandings. The first understanding, see your being. A lot of people I spoke to come to me and say, look Saja, I've been aware of being aware. What now? What's the point in that? I know I'm awareness. Great. So what? It's a fair point, but that attitude is not going to help. That attitude of like, Saja, I know I'm awareness, my suffering hasn't gone yet. You've just flipped and gone back into seeking mode. And seeking mode basically means that you're not open to experience. You're not curious about experience. You just want to know something so that that thing you know will finally remove your suffering, which is again state seeking. and you're seeking a state which will never, where you'll never have to suffer again. And that basically means I am going to perpetually resist so that then one day I cannot resist. It just makes absolutely no sense, right? So you can see your being in one moment, then all of a sudden go back into seeking mode again. And you'll never be able to understand this. Because in order to understand whether your being is limited, you can't be in the seeker mode. Because if you are, you will by definition be in the midst of resistance, and you cannot see or understand truth in the midst of resistance. It's like you can't hear if you block your ears. You can't see if you block your eyes. It's the same with truth. If you block your mind by listening to something with the aim of getting rid of your suffering, you are in that moment suffering, which means you're in that moment in resistance, and you're not going to be receptive to any of it. Because your intention is still, I'm going to tap sticks to make sound. I'm going to use my lower 3 chakras that do stuff to make results, which that's not the dimension or the realm that truth is, really. Truth is everywhere, but on this level of understanding, it's not. Once we understand our being is not limited, which you can only do by seeing and being curious about experience, you've got to be in the adventurer mode. The adventurer mode, I've gone through it in probably a lot of videos, don't know how many, but so I'm not going to cover it so much here. But adventurer mode basically means you're in pure curiosity mode. You are seeing experience new. You're excited. You're passionate to explore experience. A beautiful quote from Gabriel, my community manager, said to me the other day. He said, Saja, I'm excited to suffer now. I'm excited to suffer because every time I suffer is an opportunity for me to explore my experience, to go on an adventure. And that is the adventurer mode. It's where you're no longer seeking to remove your suffering. You're now actually ready to suffer. You're ready for its suffering to arise because now you're curious about your suffering. And what this means is that you're beginning to gradually get devoted to truth. And once you're devoted to truth, it means that you no longer refer to anything else or anyone else other than yourself to understand anything about the nature of reality, which then also means that every decision you make moment by moment is predicated upon your desire to share happiness and not to go into the world to take happiness. So see your being, see whether it's limited and sourced by the body, and then understand the implications of that. Once you go through all this, you'll then find that there is a process where you will realize what I am is unlimited. You'll realize that what you are is pure, absolute being, which is your direct experience of literally existing, minus the belief that that is sourced by an object. Then it's to see that you're unlimited, meaning that you don't have any objective quality, and to see that you are not sourced by the body. And then you understand the implications of that. That's a heavy realization to make, to realize that you are absolutely, infinitely, 100% free. It's not easy to comprehend that. It's not easy to process that. And this is what we spend probably the rest of our lives experiencing, is the body's adjustment to this realization. Because what we find is that the nature of our being is happiness. And therefore, once we see all these, we find unconditional happiness. And then what you find is that the world will still appear in the same way. You'll still see what will appear to be houses, cats, cows, and it will look dual. You'll go, oh my God, what? This is separate from this. This looks like a house, and this looks like what even is that? This looks like a cat. So why do I still see the world in this way? And what will happen is you'll see that through your little eyes and you'll go, oh, it's still dual. And the reason for this is because you're not supposed to remove duality. Duality doesn't remove. Separation is what disappears. The belief that these two are fundamentally separate realities, which means that the belief that the cat and the house and the tree are made of an external substance that exists outside your mind, and that you are in the body looking out into a separate world. This is all a load of nonsense. You've never experienced an inside or an outside. Try to experience that right now. Where's the inside and where's the outside of your experience? Where? You could say a thought is inside me. Whoa, hold on a minute. What do you mean me? A thought is inside your head? Is it? Have you ever actually looked? Have you ever actually gone, where is my head? Right? Where's your head? Where does your head exist? If thoughts are inside it, you must be able to know where your head is. Now, we're not going to go too deep into these explorations because we can do that in the community. If you want to actually learn this, go to the community. I do this for free every week. So this is an invitation. You join, you don't join, it's totally cool. But if you want to learn more, you can join that. So once you understand these, you then will still perceive duality. And that duality will trick you again into believing that you are separate. So now the whole process is literally, it's so simple. First you see what you are, which is pretty obvious. Then you realize that you're not limited, which you can also do, by the way, by doing investigations like what I call thought yoga. Or if you've listened to any Rupert Spira or Francis Lucille's guided meditations, if you've listened to any of those, or if you've done any Kashmir Shaivism types of work, like Christopher Wallace, and read any of those texts, you'll know what I mean. Thought yoga is quite literally just a process of removing knowledge, really. That's ultimately what it is. Knowledge is just stuff we've collected, conditioning that we've collected that crystallizes into a belief, and then that belief shapes the way that we see the world. So it's not necessarily understanding, it's a way of seeing that is crystallized. So in other words, seeing these are two separate things, fundamentally. So we can take investigations to relieve ourselves of this conditioning, and we can do them whenever. We don't have to just do them after all of these. We can do it while. In fact, it aids in the process of understanding. But what happens is that once we do see all of these, the world will still trick us and convince us we're separate again. So it's very simple. You just say, well, your desire for truth will iron out any misconceived beliefs. And now I'm obviously simplifying this a lot more than it is, but it is actually that simple. The only complexities are the complexities your mind has. So depending on how many complexities there are will depend on how long or vigorous that process might be. But the premise of all this is that you're not doing it to remove your suffering anymore. If you think you're going to remove your suffering by doing all this, you're mistaken. And the reason for that is because suffering doesn't need to be removed. In fact, suffering doesn't actually exist. And the belief that it does is like the belief that the snake is on the road instead of the rope. So the analogy where the snake is on the road, we think it's a snake, but actually it's just a rope. Suffering is when we have an emotion, we think it's dangerous, harmful, painful, heavy, sharp, uncomfortable. We have all these beliefs. That's like believing it's a snake. But when we actually look at it, we find out it isn't harmless, it isn't sharp, it isn't intense, it isn't painful. We created those experiences via thought, then looked at the thing through the filter of those beliefs, which then created the natural, neutral sensation, just like touching your hands together. We created the experience that this natural, neutral sensation is heavy, sharp, and all these things. And that creates the resistance. That is therefore what will then make us suffer. You can do these investigations by doing thought yoga, just going through everything we went there. This should be fun. If you don't do this because you find it fun, then why are you doing it? Go do something better with your time. If you don't find this path fun, in essence, it won't work. You've got to enjoy it. If you find the way that I explain it fun, it's probably a good sign. This is probably why you should join the community. If you don't find it fun, well, you just watched God knows how many minutes, so I would question what you're doing this far in without enjoying it. But it should be. And we want to make this as simple, easy, and fun as possible. So, whatever you do, make sure that that is what you seek. Seek that rather than anything else. Seek a path that's fun. And all of a sudden, you'll find that that's really what the adventurer is about. And the adventurer, when you're in that, it's actually your natural condition, but you don't know it. But it's a way we can embody that and then be receptive to truth so that the path is just very seamless and easy. And we do it because we enjoy it. So, hope you enjoyed. Links in the description. If you want to be there, I'd love to see you there. Have an amazing day, everyone.